apprentice and the dark. I was scared of pretty girls and starting conversations. All my friends are turning green. Yeah, the magician's assistant in their dream.
Maybe stop building dams.
Well, it's water, so without water, we probably wouldn't be where we are today, advanced speaking.
They give us water.
Well, the dams create reservoirs which attract people for recreational uses, so that draws in a big crowd to Utah.
Okay, so in Provo Canyon, for instance, there are several reservoirs or dams in there, and what they've done is they have a water storage because Utah's generally a dry state, and so what it's done is allowed us to increase the population in Utah because we've been able to provide clean water for more people through the dam system in Provo Canyon.
Assistant in their dream.
I think dams have had some adverse effect on the environment in the local area where they're situated, but they also have an immense amount of benefits for the environment both downstream. So you have to look at each situation very uniquely and differently and then address specific impacts and benefits. Like I said, each dam is specific, and so you have to determine the amount of area that is impacted, inundated, or impacted by the water body that's backed up by the dam. And in those instances, most often that's a negative impact, and it may be species on the ground, it may be fish, maybe habitat in the aquatic habitat, or it may be riparian areas. But in more modern situations, when that has occurred, there's always been, when you have an impact, you have to mitigate that impact. And so usually you have to mitigate a greater volume of wetland loss or habitat loss by creating its replacement. To answer that question, you have to understand humans' dependency on water. And so if you look at a reservoir and look at water use for irrigation, for drinking, for industrial uses, most of those uses were maxed out when you're relying on just flow of the river. And so all of the growth in the last 50 years primarily has been supported by storage of water. And that's primarily from dams. It's helpful, and I'm going to show you historically, I mean, you know the water cycle.
Yeah.
Well, in Utah, a large amount of our water storage is actually snowpack. Well, that's held in the winter months, but then it melts. But it, without storage options, goes down to the Utah Lake, and then the Great Salt Lake evaporates or is used. But it comes in a pattern that is way before the natural demand.
Okay.
And so if the pioneers came and they tried to use as much as they could of this early runoff, well, it didn't help them much in July and August. So early on, they started going up into the mountains and taking natural lakes and just raising up the berms and the dams and creating a little bit more storage, because that's what they could do with their equipment and everything. So that was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. From that time, there's been continual efforts to try to build storage to take that water that would normally just run off past us with little benefit and put it into storage so we could utilize it more.
I love you when you're singing that song, and I got a lump in my throat 'cause you're gonna sing the words.
Well, I think it's had two effects. For the area that the dam has filled up, it obviously has killed or gotten rid of the wildlife and the vegetation. But the water behind the dam is filled up with fish, a lot of vegetation inside the lake, so that's been very beneficial. A lot of deer and elk come down and drink from the water behind the dam, so that's been beneficial, and a lot of vegetation has grown around it. So some has gone away and a bunch more has taken its place.
Is this movie that I think you...
It's been extremely beneficial because we have a water reservoir, a supply of fresh water for our irrigation, for our crops, for our homes, for businesses. When the pioneers first came here, they said that nothing would grow on the land, and that's because there was no water there, but they were able to dam up City Creek, make a small dam. They were able to then irrigate from that water and raise crops. And we actually have done and are doing the same thing, only on a much bigger scale, so it's been very beneficial.
This guy decides to quit his job and head to New York City. This